So you're saying that someone called Beetlejuice?
Don't say his name. If you say his name 3 times, he will appear.
I know this is a big step for you, but in the words of Dr. Glickman, I'm gonna give you the push you need. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Is that
Beetlejuice.
First of all, I want you two kids to know this is a safe space, okay? Feel free to express yourself. Don't be afraid. I sense there's an enabler here, but we'll get to that.
you're a figment of my imagination?
Really? Is this a figment of your imagination?
September at the movies saw a 36-year-old odyssey come to an end as 4 decades later, Tom Burton finally delivered a Beetlejuice sequel. No, not talking about Francis Ford Coppola's four-decade odyssey. There's a lot of movies actually this month where we're going to be talking about 4-decade odysseys to get it into the cinemas. But we're in September at the movies. It's Ger Leggett, joined as always by Tom Pod of the Pop Cult Pod. But Tom, as you get kicked off here, in the vein of Beetlejuice finally getting a sequel, what is the oldest movie that you need a sequel to that hasn't got one yet, but you need to see it? What are you thinking?
I kind of agonized over this question a fair bit. Like, there's a lot of ones that I'm like, oh, I'd love that. But then there's other franchises where like, oh, it actually got a fair few sequels already. So do I really need another one? I shouldn't mean just leave the memories alone. But there was one that like immediately jumped to my head because I loved this film as a kid. I still love it as an adult and for totally different reasons. Technically, it's amazing. And there's so much you can do with it. I still don't understand why we have not got another Who Framed Roger Rabbit movie.
Oh,
I'll tell you why, right? I love that movie. And even back then, it was like Betty Boop was like old, out-of-date characters. Now all the characters and anime characters that we got excited about when we were that age are also now out of date. So, Roger Rabbit would now be the old, out-of-date cartoon character. Even Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny, you could probably make an argument for. And what else has gone on in animation in the last like nearly 40 years? Like we've had computer animation, we have the rise of AI now. There's so much you can do with that. And I know they tried to make a sequel and they got really close. It didn't work. I don't think we're ever going to get one, which is sad. But I feel like that's something that it still hurts me that we've only got one Roger Rabbit movie because like God damn it, I've been waiting for it forever, my whole life. Like.
I hope you get it. I hope you get it before you finish your time on this earth. It's worthwhile. Tom, you put a lot of thought into this. I just go straight for titles, and I'm just like, right, okay. And this title came to me, and I'm like, I just need to see it. Okay, I'm gonna make it really simple for you. 2 Schindlers, 2 List. Boom. There we go.
Watch Schindler the next.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, he is getting more. There you go.
Should be called Schindler's Rest.
Schindler's Rest, yeah. I also had, again, I just went down a rabbit hole with these names. I had Face Offer. The face is more off than previously. The Seventh Sense. I don't know what else you can do apart from see dead people, but that's for them to figure out. I'm just the title guy. I thought of like a mashup of 2 different movies, and like as someone who gets lost and someone who needs to be saved, Saving Private Dory. That's one I need to see. There you go.
Amazing. I just want to see them like at the beaches in Normandy. They're like, hey, where's Nemo?
That's it. They're going into the water instead. Or instead of the Shawshank Redemption, the Shawshank Condemnation. It's about time you served hard time, motherfucker. You've done a crime. Do the crime, do the time. Tom, it's been a really interesting month. But before we begin, I actually have a story for you. Because we're both obviously from doing this show, we're cinema lovers. And my local cinema at this stage, well, I've got 2, the Lighthouse and Odeon as well. But Odeon staff in particular would know me at this stage. They'd see me coming along, all right, yeah, because they obviously judge me. As a weirdo who's always there, especially on the opening night of a new movie. But I noticed that I now have a rival working in the Odeon cinema closest to me, and I don't want any part of this, but they just have beef with me, okay? And I want to quash the beef. On the off chance they do listen, I doubt they do because they hate me. But on the off chance they listen, I want to quash this beef. It's going back a while, and it's like this guy just hates me. Like the other day, like, and do you know what it dates back to? It dates back to Fast 10. Okay. I'm in there and I've got an app. Do you ever use RunPee?
No.
Brilliant app. Brilliant app. It's a great app because it tells you all the good parts of the movie to go have a piss.
Oh, I have heard of this. Okay.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Excellent app if you're a cinema freak like us. And it gives you a description of the movie, what you missed, like, so you're caught up by the time you get back. And it's like usually just filler stuff or montages or stuff like that. But you can go confidently as well. But it also tells you if they have post-credit scenes in movies too. Okay. And I'm sitting there, I'm sitting in the cinema knowing there's a post-credit scene to Fast X. And again, like it teases a sequel. So like I'm like, this is relevant. Like, and he comes in to clean and he walks up to me and he's like, you have to go, the movie's over. And I'm like, no, there's just a post-credit scene I'm gonna watch. And he's like, there's no post-credit scene, I've seen it. And I'm like, there is, like, I've got it on my phone here. There's a post-credit scene. And I'm like, you just clean though. Like, I'm fine. I'm not stopping you. Like, you can clean. He goes, I'm not allowed clean while you're in here. You have to leave. And I'm like, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm watching the post-credit scene. Like, it's not, this isn't a new concept. And he just stood there at the end of the steps and just stared at me, gave me a death. And then like the post-credit scene came up, and as I'm leaving I walked by him and I was like, I told you there's a post-credit scene. I'm like,
oh,
I'm like, look, it's happening. Like, and like he's just hated me ever since. Like, and this month again, like the latest kind of war we have that I want no part of. Like, I decided to treat myself and get the lift down. And like he saw me getting into the lift and he's like, you have to go out that way, you have to go down the escalator. I'm like, no, I don't. Like, it's a lift, it's for people to use. He's like, that's a staff lift. I'm like, where does it say staff only? I'm like, stop fighting me, bro. This is one of my hobbies. Why are you making this miserable for me? So yeah, that's my cinema arrival. I just want to quash the beef. I just want to quash the
yeah. Wow. That's almost like a like sitcom Neighbors or something, where it's just like the most minor thing. Wow. It's like Masters and Passive Aggression. It's great.
What am I doing wrong here? I'm like, I'm just using your amenities as a normal person. But yeah, no, he just hates me. I must have just one of them faces. I don't know. But Tom, anyway, really interesting month. Last month we were kind of seeing this up and we were saying it's not like there's not any massive releases, but a few pleasant surprises along the way. So let's get kicked off and let's get into our favorite movies of the month. You've teed this up nicely because obviously we don't talk about these beforehand. We don't reveal what our movie of the month is until we're on air. And I can't figure out, based on the few vague clues you've given me, what yours is. So Tom, let's reveal it. Movie of the month for September.
I hope I didn't mess this up and you're like, there's a reason why you shouldn't have picked that one, Tom.
Yeah,
it could be. Yeah, so this was one that we recorded at the very end of the last month, and I think it came out the Friday.
Okay.
And I didn't get to see it until we got in September, but that was the movie Sing Sing. Have you seen this?
Okay. I haven't seen it, no, but tell me.
Okay. So this is one of these movies that, like, when I describe this movie, you're going to be like, ugh, Oscar bait. Because it does absolutely sound like that. I'd heard positive word of it coming out of this, of the film festivals. I think might have been the end of last year. I think it might have played Toronto or something. And what it's about is basically it's these prisoners in Sing Sing prison in New York. And our lead character is played by oh god, let me get his name up. It's just Coleman Domingo. There we go. Who, like, Coleman Domingo is just doing some of the best work in Hollywood, and he's so underrated and overlooked. Everything he's in, it's just like add a star to the rating, like, you know.
Okay.
So basically it's set in a prison, and there's all these men who are part of the kind of prisoner art community. So they're all putting on performances and plays, and they're all aspiring kind of actors within the prison system. And it basically takes, like, it's so hard to make this not sound really cheesy and really Oscar baity, because straight away you're just like, okay, I can see what's going to happen here. And it very much is that. It's like there's a person who they invite into the kind of theater circle who's a real hardened criminal, real tough motherfucker, like, that you wouldn't cross And over the course of it, we get to see, him develop as a person, but also other people in the program kind of respond to him and why they're in the program. And it was just a really powerful piece of filmmaking. It sounds so kind of predictable and cheesy. The guy who it really blew me away as far as the actor in this was a guy called Clarence Divine Eye Macklin, um, a guy who plays himself and co-wrote the script. And when I say he plays himself, I don't just mean he's playing a prisoner. This is a man who went through the arts program in prison, and that's how he became an actor. It was just such a really, really powerful film that like there was moments where I thought I had it figured out and it went another way. I also thought it had a really kind of effective and simple kind of cinematography and like stuff that was just set up and then paid off later on in such a satisfying way. I'm not going to say there's anything too surprising in it, but I thought it was so well performed, genuinely moving. There's also something, and I don't know should I reveal this because it's more of a production side of things that I wasn't aware of watching it. And then when the credits rolled, I was like, oh, wow, okay, you've sold me on this. This is amazing. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell exactly why I liked it or sell people on it. I just think it's a really powerful and emotional story about people who are put in the prison system and how they can sort of find rehabilitation through the arts. And it's also, I should say, it sounds very dry and slow in that way, but it is also really quite funny. Like the whole goal of the program isn't that they're like making, like we're putting on Othello. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? And one of the Coleman Domingo's character is a writer. So he's like, I've been working on this script, and all of a sudden the new guy comes in and he's like, yeah, well, I don't want to. Why are we doing drama, man? I want to do comedy. We're surrounded by drama all day. Let's do comedy. And then basically, someone's like, yeah, okay, well, Coleman Domingo is feeling a bit. And there is like the conflict between Coleman Domingo and that character is really interesting as well. I love the dynamic between them. And basically, of course, when he decides not to do it with his script, the thing kind of escalates. And all of a sudden, someone's like, I want to do comedy. I'd like to do a time travel play. I'd like to Freddy Krueger to be in the play. And then they basically have to get a guy to write that play. And it becomes like it gets so out of hand, but it's kind of hilarious when you see that stuff paying off later on in the film. Yeah, I just thought it was a really good watch. Something that could have been really dour and dramatic ended up being quite entertaining and lighthearted, but moments of seriousness and emotion that really did work. Yeah, no, I would definitely recommend it. I honestly, when I left this film in the cinema, I remember thinking like, if this isn't in my top 10 this year, the rest of the year is going to be dynamite. Genuinely.
Okay.
So like that's
okay.
as high praise as I can give it.
Okay. Look, you've sold me. I remember now because I do. When I saw the poster, I was like, yes, I remember looking at this and saying, nah. And I'll share. Now, we've got video on Spotify as well. For anyone who's listening to us and doesn't know, you can check this out as well if you're watching on Spotify. I'll share my screen now, and I think that'll show you why. I think people will instantly know. And like you're saying, it's very Oscar bait. You've got the soft focus, looking, thinking very hard, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, when I saw like them coming out of Toronto with this, I was like, it was like it's about prisoners who find rehabilitation through the arts. I was like, fuck off.
Yeah, the transformative power of art. I'm like, you're just saying all the words that make me roll my eyes here. But you know what?
Yeah.
No, if you say they execute on it, I trust your word, and I'll check it out. I'll put that on my list. You have me intrigued. Sing. There you go.
Right.
Check it out, guys. I'm gonna go for one much more obvious, and well, the voice of I think as well, because it's not for everyone, but I think if it is for you, it's very for you. My movie of the month is The Substance.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Brilliant. I was not expecting to like this. You know what? The Substance, for anyone who hasn't seen or heard about it yet, it stars Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. Essentially, it's not a million miles off Face Off since we were discussing it, except it's more body off. So Demi Moore is essentially an aging actress. However, at the start of the movie, she's still looking at 61, absolutely sensational. Fair play to her. So, which kind of you know, you're like, is that undermining the whole thing that they're going for here? Because she's gorgeous still. But like it's very you've got like kind of the creepy studio executive played by Dennis Quaid, whose name is Harvey, which the movie is as subtle as a brick.
There's no subtlety here at all. At any point
Yeah.
in the movie, it's like, yeah, I know what you're going for because that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, you're telling me he's essentially saying I'm supposed to be Harvey Weinstein, but he's creepy, he's weird. There's loads of unflattering camera shots of him, and basically, like the movie starts, and it's a very good movie at showing, not telling, even though it isn't a subtle movie. The movie begins essentially when we see Demi Moore's characters walk or like star on the Walk of Fame. And we notice that over time, it's getting more, it starts as beautiful. There's celebrations and cameras as she's laying down the star. And then it starts to get more decrepit and worn over time. You start to see cracks in it. And it's a really effective way of showing time pass and kind of what happens, like, and you know, people and things diminishing over time, which is the story they're telling. And she starts to kind of realize that her career is winding down. She doesn't have as much value to the Harveys of this world anymore. And essentially she wants to, you know, get a younger body, at which point she's told by a doctor about this product called the substance, which can achieve that, which is where Margaret Qualley comes in. And she essentially is the younger version of Demi Moore. I don't want to kind of get into that, but it gets very graphic from there. It is a horror movie, but it's a body horror movie, but it's a horror movie with a lot to say. It's the second directorial feature from Coralie Farjat following the hugely lauded 2017 movie Revenge, and it was nominated for a Palme d'Or at this year's Cannes and also won Best Screenplay there. Universal, actually, they'll be raging, stepped away from this, citing concerns about the body horror content. The movie stepped in and took it over. And again, Universal are probably kicking themselves because this is phenomenal. I loved everything about this movie. Again, it seems high concept when you say it, like someone has to take a substance and then they become another person for 7 days, but they have to feed their other person and blah, 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 blah. I won't get into the rules. But if you heard the rules, you think, is that going to be difficult to follow? Do I have to remember No, the movie makes it really simple and straightforward and takes you on the story. And again, there's not even much dialogue in the movie. A lot of it is just the characters acting, thinking, and reflecting in their respective younger and older versions of themselves. Although, like, it is the at several times you're reminded that you are the same person. You're not different people, and just remember that. There's like so much visual, like it's a very visual movie. Like the camera is almost boundary breaking, intimate and up close in a lot of its shots. You know, there's nudity, full nudity in this as well. And again, the you know, they're very game, Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. They're fully bought into this. And there's again, like, even the set design is phenomenal. Like Demi Moore's apartment is kind of decadent but really empty, with the only sign of character in the apartment, despite it being beautiful, being a wall blown up wall picture of a younger version of her. And even the only other people we see in the apartment are cleaners, and they feel really distant and removed from what's actually happening. It is body horror. It gets intense. It gets crazy. Body horror is for some people, it's not for other people. If it's not for you or you're on the fence, this probably isn't the movie for you. There is guts, there is blood, there is pus, there is close-up injections, there's things crawling inside people's skins, there's things popping out. If you can't hack it, avoid. But if you can hack it, if it's something that you think you can take for the benefit of a good story, this is excellent. It goes bonkers at the end of the movie in a way that could easily drift into self-parody, because they really commit when they go bonkers. Whenever the movie escalates, it goes straight to 11. But it never does. It always stays on point. It always stays, it's funny at times, but it's also devastating in the same vein as being funny. It's really pointed satire. Again, not trying to be subtle, not trying to be nuanced, very clearly telling the story that it's telling. And I was thinking about this afterwards, and I was thinking, how the fuck do you describe the substance? And the only way I can think of is the substance is if David Cronenberg fucked the Elephant Man. The substance is if the Barbie movie got spiked and puked and had diarrhea at the same time at the Spire, the substance is fucking iconic. And I want Demi Moore to win Best Actress at the Oscars for it. And I don't think that's a crazy shout. I think she's going to get nominated because she is fucking amazing. So's Margaret Qualley for the record here, but Demi Moore ticks all the boxes. It's got comeback story. It's got this. It's got that. She ticks all the boxes here. Go see The Substance if you think it even maybe your type of movie. It is phenomenal, but just be warned, it's fucking extreme. Tom, your thoughts on The Substance?
Yeah, this was so close to being my movie of the month as well. I love it. On the note that it's not going to be for everyone, at one point in the film, I heard the person behind me go, "God, I feel nauseous." Followed 5 minutes later by, "Oh God, it keeps getting worse." And that's what you're in for with this one, folks.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cronenberg. I definitely think I would have mentioned the same thing. Cronenberg's kind of The Fly, especially, and that's kind of that body kind of swap body horror kind of thing. It also reminded me of The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, just because it's all ooey gooey, and as soon as you're like, oh well, that looks slightly normal. Oh God, no! Now there's spider legs coming out of a head or some shit. But the movie hasn't left my head. Like I literally just leaned off camera because I'm like, oh, this kind of looks like The Substance. What the fuck? I was like, wait a minute, is there a slightly better version of myself in this house somewhere? No, I'm the better version, duh.
But I agree. Sorry it took me so long to
There's a reason we
there.
have to space our recordings out at least a week apart, you know? But I thought this was really, really interesting. As you mentioned, it was not subtle. I thought that was totally fine, though, for what it was going for. This has been on my radar since Cannes, when I heard the reactions coming out, because I do love a bit of body horror. I also love a bit of extreme horror. And as soon as I heard Cannes talking about body horror, I was thinking of Titan from a few years back, which I loved.
Yes.
So I was like, let's fucking go. I think I even mentioned it when we were talking about the movies we're most excited for. And yeah, it absolutely lived up to this for me. I thought Margaret Qualley was really good. Demi Moore, like I was looking back and I don't even know if I've seen Demi Moore in anything. I know Demi Moore as the icon she is, like, but I was like here, I was like, oh, fucking well done, Demi Moore, like to be putting in that a shift. And it is. I had the exact same thought as you, where it was like, it's like, oh, if you're old and hideous and past the hill, and I'm looking at Demi Moore like, excuse me. If you're past it like Demi Moore, like, oh yeah. But I just thought it was a really violent, kind of disgusting film that I felt like it had something to say in the best way. There is issues I have with it, kind of maybe a few plot issues where I'm like, I don't know if that makes sense or why that character acted that way. But I could kind of look past that. I actually, a weird part, I did have this thought afterwards where I was like, it would have been interesting if they got Margaret Qualley's mother, Andie MacDowell, in that role. I was like, that would have been interesting. But then again, maybe she was like, "Oh, so you're saying my daughter's a better version of me? Fuck you!" Like, you know. But I did have that thought going into it. Dennis Quaid, who's someone I just totally written off in this, I was like, man, he is loving it. He's just really leaning into it. Like, I don't think I could look at Prawns the same way for a while after watching him with this movie. But I thought the look of the film was great. It definitely kind of was very male gazy, but it's a female director, and that serves the purpose of the narrative in general. So I think that totally worked, and I think it worked in that it was making you being like, oh, look at these amazing bodies, and oh, look at these amazing body parts, only to like towards the end of the film be like, oh God, these bodies are horrible. How did I ever like them? I think I could say maybe the last 20 minutes or so, I can't tell if it was a step too far or if I liked it, but I feel like the movie kind of got a little bit sloppy or bonkers, and I haven't decided where I landed it yet. I thought it was definitely fun. It won me back around by the very end, but there was a kind of a few moments where I was like, okay, now it's gotten to the point of comedy and parody almost. But no, I think it's a film that I would agree with you. If you think it's something that you're able to sit through, absolutely sit through it, because there's so much great stuff in here. it's not going to be for everyone. There's going to be people, and I've seen people online already be like, "This is the most disgusting thing ever. What the fuck is wrong with you if you like this?" I did see some walkouts in my screening, and I'm not surprised. But I thought it was such an interesting and cool sci-fi premise, and yeah, like there's so much information that they throw at you that feels like it could get lost in the shuffle. But I thought it did such a great job of explaining the rules and not making it like just needless, like constantly exposition. I thought it also did a really good job of showing the passage of time and then basically setting up every rule so that they could explore every possibility with their premise. And I feel like in my head, I was like, well, they're missing a trick now if they don't do this in the plot, and they did it. And then there was a few things where like hadn't thought of that. What a great way to take the story. And I feel like even though it's a slightly longer film for a horror film at 2 hours 20, I feel like I was never bored watching this. I don't think you could ever be bored watching a film like this because there was constantly something around the edge to make you be like, oh, that was weird. Oh, that was creepy. Visually, I thought it was a really amazing film. I love the kind of soundtrack of it. Yeah, this is one that I also would not be surprised if it's in my top 10 for the year, to be honest, because this was totally up my alley.
Yeah, yeah. I like, again, I can tell, and again, we're warning you about the body horror. Don't add us if you go see this and it's a lot, because I'd be up for a lot of horrors. Probably horror at its peak is my favorite genre of cinema,
Yeah.
and this is horror at its peak, but also as a result, I've seen a lot. And I was like leaning into my chair. You can't not like, because it's just, and another thing is it never feels CGI. It never feels forced. It also feels very natural, which makes
Yeah.
it more disgusting. Even when it gets sensational, which it does towards the end. And I won't say it's realistic, but it's natural and it's practical, which is really good. So yeah, that's the Substance and Sing Sing, our movies of the month. Interesting selection. Speaking of practical, let's talk about a movie which fought to stay practical, because it was the sequel to the 1988 movie Beetlejuice. It's Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Wait, did I just say it 3 times?
There you go. He has to make an appearance. Is that 3 times? It's so hot in this hoodie.
For anyone listening on Spotify, what are you listening for? You can watch us now. Tom revealed Beetlejuice hoodie.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained that because otherwise all they would have heard is zip. I was like, Tom's wrong.
Yeah.
What is Tom doing?
Tom made it very inappropriate, but we're going to carry on. So this is the sequel to the 1988 movie. Tim Burton returned to direct off a screenplay by Alfred Gough and Miles Miller. You've got Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, and Catherine O'Hara reprising their roles while they're joined by the likes of Justin Theroux, Monica Bellucci, Jenny Ortega, and Willem Dafoe. This has been in the works, and like another movie with a slightly more epic story that I'll give you the full download on as we get to it, but it's been in the works for 36 years now. There have been multiple scripts that have been produced but never got made. Beetlejuice in Love, Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. I'm really glad they didn't go down the avenue of really stupid, obvious ones. And this is what we got. But Burton, like we said, it's very practical. He wanted the film to feel handmade and not rely on technology at any stage, basing it on the psychedelic boat ride from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So that's the setup. Beetlejuice. I don't think there was a lot riding on this because I don't know how much of nostalgia there is for Beetlejuice. Tom, was this something you were looking forward to? Was this something that held a place to your heart? And if so, did the sequel live up to your expectations, or what were your thoughts?
So like, yeah, I like Beetlejuice. I don't love it. Like some people are like, oh, it's their favorite film. I kind of love Beetlejuice for a lot of reasons, and I love it a lot for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of people love early Tim Burton in general. It was kind of the madcap creativity, the weird goth dark sense of humor to it, that I really liked. Like I mean, I'm one of a few people I'd say who's liked and enjoyed the Beetlejuice musical. But like I think in general, it's one that like if we didn't get a sequel, I'd be totally fine with. It just kind of feels like it served its purpose narratively. But when I heard we were getting one, I was like, okay, well, we got Michael Keaton back as Beetlejuice. Like, I kind of want to see that. I'm like, how does someone approach a role like 40 years later? Especially now that like Michael Keaton has had such a kind of career resurgence in the last few years. I was like, I want to see how he plays his character now. And then when I heard like Jenna Ortega was going to be, Astrid Dietz, like I was like, perfect, sold. This is just such perfect casting.
Yeah.
And you know, I think there was also something like I almost feel like Tim Burton needed this, or we wanted Tim Burton to get to this because it felt like he'd lost his way a lot, and this was kind of him going back to his roots a little bit. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with
Mm.
this, I would say. Like as far as a sequel to Beetlejuice, it's kind of what you want, you know. It feels very much like a return to what we did like about the last Beetlejuice. It feels like it kind of explores the world a bit more. I think I like the character of Beetlejuice more than I necessarily like a lot like like the movie itself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the kind of world and the afterworld and all this stuff I find really, really interesting. It definitely feels like they still stuck with the practical effects, which is also another reason why it's getting a thumbs up from me. I love the use of practical effects. You could definitely say it kind of, you know, maybe I'm trying to think, member berries this for lack of a better term. It's like, hey, remember the Shrunken Headman? Now there's a whole army of them. But I still found that pretty entertaining and fun to look
Yeah.
at. I thought they did a good job with most of the returning characters. I think there's a really awkward thing we have to talk about with this movie, which is the return of Charles Dietz, that character. Because yeah, don't look up why that man isn't in the film and then be like, wait a minute, I'm shocked he's actually in the film that much considering all that.
Yeah.
Um so that I thought that was weird. And it means that they kind of did weird art styles and stuff to explain it, which is odd. But other than that, the returning characters, I mean, I feel like the actually person who was most hard done by here was Winona Ryder's character. I thought she just had things to do, but I felt she kind of felt a little bit lost compared to the rest of it. I feel
Mm.
like they took this moment to be like, hey, remember how much we all love Catherine O'Hara over the last few years? Let her
Yes.
let her run free. Because that character felt fairly underdeveloped in the original movie. Here it was like, okay, Catherine O'Hara, we underestimated your game. Let's go.
Yeah.
Um, I thought Jenna Ortega was pretty good in the role of Astrid. Again, I kind of feel like maybe to the detriment of Winona Ryder's character, they gave her a lot of screen time because she's like one of the hot stars at the moment. As far as the other returning characters, obviously, I think Michael Keaton did a great job. I think like they've really leaned into this with this character that necessarily wasn't there in the original, but as time has kind of softened the edges, like we kind of forget that like Beetlejuice was like a weird, sleazy, creepy kind of pedophile, kind of, you know. And it kind of feels like they softened the edges at here because it was like, hey, he is a wacky guy, and they didn't soften it as much as I expected them to, but
Mm.
they kind of made it so that you could find the character fun. He's basically a Saturday morning cartoon character in a less cartoony world, you know, and I think that totally worked for this thing. Now, as far as the new characters go, I thought Justin Theroux was great. I loves that
Yes.
character. Um, and I actually think it's interesting that because his character, like a lot of the time in his personality, are a lot like Catherine O'Hara's character in the original, and even though she kind of doesn't like him at all in this movie, which I thought was interesting. I thought, as far as other new characters go, kind of hit and miss.
Mm.
I thought Willem Dafoe was good, but he didn't have a lot to do. I thought Monica Bellucci was, again, had nothing to do. I don't want to say this, but Tim Burton had a habit of putting, Helena Bonham Carter in all his movies when they were married. His new
Hmm.
squeeze is Monica Bellucci. And Bellucci, I should say. I keep saying Belushi like Jim Belushi. Monica Bellucci. Um, she's thrown in here. And there's nothing really for her to do. And I think that's a larger part of the movie in general. There's far too much going on here.
Mm.
Like if you told me like, hey, they had script for all the possible sequels and they mixed them all together, yeah, I believe that. There's like 6 or 7 subplots in this movie, some of which are tied together in the end, some of which don't really go anywhere. There's an interesting kind of love story for Astrid's character with a kind of a love interest. And I thought that was interesting. And then it kind of was just like, we're going to wrap that up. I was like, oh, that was interesting. And then it just kind of had to fizzle out.
Yeah.
And it serves its purpose to get them to a location in the film. But it was also that thing where I'm like, stick with the story. And then by the time we get to the ends, it kind of felt like, and I thought what was admirable was we get so many sequels, especially legacy sequels, and it would be totally forgivable in the case of a film that has had such a big gap where it just basically is like play the hits and just recreates and remakes the movie with the original cast as well. And they don't really do that here, which I thought was admirable. But by the time I got to the end, it felt like they were just like, let's make the ending like, of the original movie a little bit. And it kind of came out of nowhere, and I thought it was a little bit disappointing. But there's a lot enough weirdness in this that I quite enjoyed. Like we get an origin for Beetlejuice, which I wasn't expecting, but it was so weird and over the top that it was kind of hilarious. It feels like the first time where I can be like, "Welcome back, Tim Burton." Like it felt like he'd gone back to his old ways, and I hope this lights a fire in him because it feels like since like he started using visual effects to recreate his style, it just hasn't really looked right. And I feel like I hope this is like we still have like the craziness of the afterworld, the weird characters like that I still remember from the like Miss Argentina, the Shrunken Head, all those kind of things. I feel like there's lots of those in here. I feel like we still have the weird German expressionism that was there before, and maybe he's just doing that because that's what was there in the original. But I'd like to think that he's kind of lit himself a bit of a spark here that I feel was needed. But yeah, I mean, if you like the original Beetlejuice, I don't think you're going to be upset with this one. To be honest, I feel like it's pretty much what you would want out of a Beetlejuice sequel, and to deliver that 40 years later, nearly, is all the more impressive. You know.
Yeah, I agree with the concept that Tim Burton is back. And the second I felt this, the second the opening credits ran, because it was as soon as you saw a Tim Burton film, you're aware because you've got the Danny Elfman booming soundtrack, you've got the 80s style kind of credits, and like they're running through the town and so on. And it's like it feels like a 1980s movie, and it's unapologetic in that, in a way that never feels like it's pandering either. It's a very much a get the band back together movie, but in a good way. There's some other random Burton kind of verse cameos in this as well that were very welcome. And then some others, like I agree, Monica Bellucci's character, it just meandered. There was no purpose to it. It was a way, the only benefit was it was a way to get us more Michael Keaton early into the movie, which I feel that like the movie Beetlejuice has a lot less Beetlejuice than you remember. And I feel that they wanted to address that and go like, let's not like mess around here or overthink this. Let's get him in as early as possible. And let's not wait for the characters to need to say his name and then do that. Which, okay, net benefit there. But yeah, I felt like there was an attempt to kind of get everyone to get their shit in. Which almost made it impressive because it worked. Do you know? This movie shouldn't have worked on paper. Like, again, I can make critiques of it, but at the end of the day, I had a great time watching it. I really, really enjoyed it. The cast were dead on and they were so bought in. They knew the brief. The older cast members were there to be back. No one felt like they were collecting a paycheck. They were delighted to be in this world again. They love and relish their characters in a way that Beetlejuice has some nostalgia for me. It was a movie I watched quite a lot as a kid, and haven't really watched until I rewatched it again in anticipation of this. But again, like it made me feel like they loved the characters, and that made it a lot more fun. Catherine O'Hara is still a gift. Like she just had me cracking up, and I'm so glad they made space for her. I think she is long overdue her victory lap, and I hope this is just the start of it. In the same way, Winona Ryder is also getting her victory lap. I thought Justin Theroux absolutely fantastic as Lydia's slimeball fiance using therapy speak to control her. Like when he comes along, it's like, what happened? I was just helpfully getting these boxes from town. Like you have to pay attention to his lines because they're fucking devastatingly funny when you listen to them. But he is phenomenal and never overplays it either. No one overplays it here in a movie that it would be very easy to do. Even Michael Keaton, you know, he just knows how to play this character. He knows how to get it right. He knows how to make his lines sting so that he never needs to ham it up at any stage. I felt that like Tim Burton movies and great ones, they feel as much of like a dance as a movie. And this kind of recaptures that magic with a modern bent without ever feeling like it's flexing or trying too hard. I say Monica Bellucci was unnecessary for this movie, and I do feel that ultimately the story went nowhere and there was no point in having her or benefit to having her. But the introduction scene where she was brought into it was one of the best sequences I've seen in cinema this year, and it was just pure cinema. It like again, it was just like a musical sequence, and it was like, okay, this is good. It just reassured me at any stage. I was like, they've got this right, and then I could settle in and just enjoy this movie. And like again, I felt that one thing I wondered when I was coming into this movie was the original. It hasn't aged well in some of its jokes. Like there's a lot of jokes about suicide in the original that you just couldn't get away. And part of me was like, that's also part of Beetlejuice though. You need to kind of have that little bit of tastelessness in there. But there like again, without ever going too far or kind of, you know, risking being cancelled or anything. Like there's one character who was an actor who died in a movie shooting. And you got to keep in mind that the original Beetlejuice, Alec Baldwin was in it. You know what I mean? It's very close to the line. He didn't return because it made no sense.
I didn't even think of that. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was close to the line. And again, I'm like, okay, I like it. But it's just the right side of the line. It was never tasteless or anything like that as well. The end of the movie, without giving away any details, goes again, like The Substance, absolutely bonkers. It actually felt more like Rocky Horror than Beetlejuice at times, and lent fully into the madness of it all. But again, you're not here for realism, you're here for fun. And for me, this is not only the best case scenario of these type of reboot sequels. I remember there was a time when I just wouldn't see sequels to movies that I loved because they felt like they were money grabbing, and Hollywood very much didn't have the formula. I think they have the formula now and they know how to do good reboot sequels. And this is up there with any of these reboot sequels. But not only that, I'd say I had more fun watching this than watching the original. I think this was a more fun movie. It was more playful. It understood the brief more. Again, you got to consider that in 1988, they're like, is this a horror movie? Is it not? Is it going to be scary? Is it going to be funny? This knows what Beetlejuice is because they've had 36 years to sit with Beetlejuice. They've shown it to their kids. They've shown it to their kids' kids. You know what I mean? So everyone's grown and they've understood it and they got the brief, and it's much more clear here than it is in the original. And I'll go back to this before I watched the original. I thought it was an absolute triumph, a really, really fun movie, and just delighted to see Tim Burton back because again, he has a lot to offer in Hollywood, but like you said, he got a little lost for a year. So hopefully this is a start. Again, despite the naming convention, this probably, he said, this will be the last Beetlejuice movie. But I'll be interested in seeing, you know, what else he can resurrect or what else he can come up with.
Yeah, my like OCD kicks in when they're like, we're not going to make a third Beetlejuice movie. I'm like, no, you have to now. You can't have Beetlejuice and Beetlejuice and not Beetlejuice. Like, you know,
the purpose is tree. The purpose is
I
tree.
know, yeah, for God's sake. But yeah, no, I actually agree with what you said. I think having rewatched the original for this, I actually think I did enjoy the new one more so, or had more fun with it certainly, than the original. I actually realized like I'm going to talk about the Beetlejuice musical again. It's fucking amazing, and like a lot of my residual love for Beetlejuice has come from that musical because it's basically just like. It's amazing. Check out the soundtrack to that.
Okay, excellent. So that's one movie that took 4 decades to be made. Let's talk about another. And I've got a story for you. This is covered in an excellent, I think it was Variety article that covers the story behind this. I can't remember. I could be getting that wrong. But it had me hyped. There's 2 projects that I wonder I'll if I'd ever see this year, and we got to see one. The other one is the Prince documentary, the Netflix one that's made and ready to go. But again, the estate is apparently holding it up. But the other one is this, Megalopolis. It is Francis Ford Coppola's Labor of Love, and wow, it has taken 40 years to get to the screen. So no pressure. Coppola came up with the idea for this while he was shooting Apocalypse Now. So that was 1979. So again, like, yeah, you're talking the guts of 40 years. It was written and developed initially in the 80s, but it was scrapped after Coppola had to prioritize other projects to make up for losses he'd had in previous movies. And then it was revived in 2001, but it was scrapped again after 9/11 because the purpose of this is essentially, in short, it kind of tries to retell the Catilinarian conspiracy of 63 BC, ancient Rome. I don't know that story. I didn't know that going in, but essentially it is the fall of Rome, but it is reimagining it happening in America, and it tells about how America could potentially go down the same road. A lot of the characters, you have Catiline, Cicero, Caesar, they're named after the Roman characters, and they kind of dress and act that way, but it is again set in kind of modern day America. So again, after 9/11, not the best time to imagine New York's downfall in the cinema. Coppola again reignited this because this is his epic, this is his magnum opus, and there is a lot to like about the determination he showed in releasing this movie. He sold part of a winery he owned in California to develop it with his own funds for $120 million. And so he didn't have to be told what to do by the studio execs. Curse those evil people. There's a really hectic production as a result, though, because Coppola is running the show himself. He bought a hotel at one stage to live in and move his family into while he was producing it. He allowed actors to rewrite scenes and improvise, which led to the art and design department resigning, because every day the movie changed. Like, actors would speak in interviews about showing up ready to do one day, and then Coppola would just have a different idea and they'd go record somewhere completely random that they'd never planned in a scene that was just written that day. There was many days apparently when no work was done at all due to Coppola smoking weed in his trailer, and there was reports that aren't surprising once you've seen this movie of him behaving creepy towards female cast and crew. This saga has gone on so long because, again, this is personally brought us The Godfather, so carries a lot of weight in Hollywood, and the cast he got is pretty epic. But it's gone on so long that Nicolas Cage, Leonardo DiCaprio, Jude Law, and Christian Bale have all been pegged to play the lead character Caesar before it eventually fell to Adam Driver. Giancarlo Esposito replaced Forrest Whitaker for the character of Cicero, who is Caesar's rival in this. Lawrence Fishburne is the one constant throughout this. He's starring in his 5th collaboration with Coppola, and then you've got the likes of Shia LaBeouf, Aubrey Plaza, Jason Schwartzman, Natalie Emmanuel, who you'll know from Game of Thrones, and John Voight, who you'll know from just being a weirdo. Debuted at Cannes without a distributor due to kind of muted responses to early press screenings of it, and Coppola's really over-ambitious goals where he has to win Oscars with this. So he was holding off for a major streamer, which obviously never came. Lionsgate eventually intervened and agreed to release it under the proviso that Coppola paid for the marketing himself, which he agreed to. And there's a novel and a fly-on-the-wall documentary that's being released to accompany this. There was controversy before this came about. The initial trailer featured negative reviews of The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. They were trying to preempt what they'd heard were negative reviews of this by saying, people said this about The Godfather, people said this about Apocalypse Now. I don't know if you've heard this, but this was later revealed to be fake reviews that were fabricated using ChatGPT. And possibly the icing on the cake in this, just before, a couple of weeks ago, this was still going on, Coppola created a Letterboxd account, listed 16 movies that inspired Megalopolis, and then gave his own movie 5 stars and left the website. It is a truly bonkers Hollywood story. But after all this work and effort that's gone into it, Tom, is it actually any good?
Yeah. I mean, you said 9/11 like put the kibosh and stopped this film. I don't want to say 9/11 led to some good things, but yeah, this oh man, what a fucking calamity of a film, in my opinion. Like I knew, like we were all, I think a lot of people were pulling for him here, like because it was like, man, he's coming back. He's selling his winery, all putting his own money into it. He's going against the studio system. And this is the result. It's like if you told me he drank the winery before he made the movie, I'd have believed you, because the only reason I wouldn't believe it is because a drunk would have made a more entertaining and exciting movie. This is one of the most embarrassing ends to a career since Elvis fucking shot himself in the toilet. Like it's the collapse of like a titan, like, you know, like it. And it's, oh sorry, it should be pretentious because this film is so pretentious. It's not like fucking Ozymandias crumbled and over his once great empire. This is like a man falling in the shower and pulling down the shower curtain and trying to pull himself off, and then falling again flat in his arse. It is really, really bad in my I keep referencing it with in my opinion because I know there's people already that are like, what an amazing journey he's taken us on. I think those people are high as a fucking kite.
He's not gonna
I
fuck
talked
you, lads. He's not gonna. Well, he probably would
yeah,
actually. To be honest, he's a creep.
they literally like I mean, yeah. And again, I read the same articles as you. I was following this. I was like, man, but what if it's good? Um
Yeah.
it's so embarrassing. I talked about Sing Sing and I was on about like all the prisoners being like, put this in the film, put this in the film. That's what this feels like. It feels like going to a party at like where it's just nothing but first year college students, and one of them studied philosophy and one of them studied the ancient histories, and then there's a first year filmmaker trying to make something of this. Um, the only positive I can say in my, I like maybe there's a few things that are positive if I really thought about it, but I was like, visually, it's never boring.
Mm.
It's not coherent
Yeah.
at times. The whole film, like if you asked me to explain the plot of Megalopolis, I think I would genuinely struggle. There's some semblance of a plot, but why things are happening scene to scene, don't fully understand. What like I mean, it says a lot that the poster, what's trying to sell you on the movie, what's meant to be exciting, is Adam Driver holding a T square. Like that's like, oh, that'll get people in. Um, I think every actor in this, it has a great cast. I like they must just to be so embarrassed with how this whole thing played out. The dialogue is really bad. Like there was people laughing at the screening. I mean, and there was moments where I'm like, that wasn't meant to be funny, was it? And like there's some moments that I think are so hilarious where a scene will happen and then it will just cut to an actor who'll just say one line and then that'll be the end of the scene. I'm like, why did it cut to that actor? That scene added nothing except to make it feel comedic. Um, who else is in this movie that we need to talk about? Giancarlo Esposito, to be fair, I thought was decent as the mayor. Aside from that, like Natalie Emmanuel was, grand, I guess. Poor Aubrey Plaza. Like, what did they do to this woman? I love Aubrey Plaza. First of all, they gave her a character name. They gave her the character name Wow Platinum, which like that she went through the NXT name generator there. You know what I mean? Like, um, it's and they make her do the most embarrassing scenes in the movie where I'm just like, oh no, Aubrey, not for this film. No, no.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf is in here, reminding us why Shia LaBeouf belongs in the bin. Um, Again, his character is just horrendous, and like there's so much awkward exposition and narration for his character that I was just like, this is hilarious. I don't think it's meant to be, but it's hilarious. John Voight again looks lost. And I again, maybe it was the direction, maybe it was the script, maybe just because there's a reason John Voight isn't in films before, and it's not just because he's a weird fucking racist or whatever he is now at the stage.
Also, ironically though, and we can't get into why, but has the best scene. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
funniest scene, but he has the
there
best
is
scene. We can't talk about it. No, don't spoil
there's 15 seconds in this movie where I was like, you know what, this whole thing has been worth it. But yeah, like there's people talking about that scene, and when people say like what happens in that scene, people are like, I can't tell if you're joking or not. No, that's it's yeah,
the
like
movie was joking or not. Like Jesus.
yeah, and then there's a load of actors where you're like, where have these people been? Like Talia Shire is in it, Dustin Hoffman is in it, and I'm like, oh man, why? Like you got them for this weird like amalgamation of what if Rome, but now, and it's basically like, oh, is like the worst thing about this is it takes you on this big long journey of like, man, civilization, it's going to crumble and humanity is dooming itself, and then basically it ends on the equivalent of like of a message that has the depth of a fridge magnet, where it's just like, hey, everybody. Like, no, do you know what? Not the depth of a fridge magnet. It has the depth of Bill and Ted, who already nailed this message, who said, be excellent to each other. That's what the film basically ends on. And the weird thing is, this architect who's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be a bad guy because people expect you to be bad when you're bad, or whatever the fuck. I can't remember what he said. It's already been blocked by my memory. He's basically give like the whole people like are like boo Megalopolis boo, and he gives this big rousing speech that is the most cringeworthy I'm so deep like speech ever. And then basically he's like, hey everybody, be excellent to each other, and everyone's like, yeah, he's right, everybody. Oh yeah, what do we think of that? It's like like Francis, what are you doing? Like, why is I can't believe he spent so long getting this made, and this is what it was. And it actually made me think, you know what? Maybe like the studio system and studio execs aren't as dumb as we think they are.
Yeah.
Maybe they could have hammered this into something usable, something that could have worked. Because every studio executive in Hollywood, and this was an article in the Hollywood Reporter, saw this film and said no. Like at the time, they screened this, and he was like, I'm hoping for an IMAX release. I'm hoping for this." And they saw it, and they were like, "Yeah, there's not a chance. No, no." He had to really reduce his demands and his interests. I mean, there's another thing I want to talk about with this movie that neither of us could have experienced. I think they're only doing it now in like New York and Los Angeles. Is that there was meant to be a live actor component to the film. It just shows how bonkers and batshit Francis Ford Coppola is, and maybe out of touch possibly with what's going on in cinema. It happens in like the film festivals, and it's playing I think it's like marketed as the ultimate experience in some parts of the world, where there's a scene where Adam Driver is addressing, he's like in the middle of a press conference, and he's like looking out at the audience, and there's an actor in the screening that's meant to just like say the question. Now, apparently, I actually heard an interview with someone who did that, and apparently they're just lip syncing, so but to a person in the room. So I'm like, why? What's the benefit of that at all?
Not at all. Yeah.
So they're just meant to lip sync along to the question, and then Adam Driver's like, yes, well, on the basis of that, but presentation wise now, it's just that the screen gets really small for no real reason. Because I guess they wanted it to be darker so they could highlight the person speaking to the screen. But it's weird. I mean, I wanted to speak to the screen. I wanted to be like, "What are you doing? Boo! Shut it off!" Yeah, horrendous. I think there's very few redeeming qualities in this film. Maybe at some point people will do an in-depth analysis and they'll see, hey, you know what, this was ahead of its time, but I don't think I'm ever going to get to that thing because I don't think I'll ever watch it again. 5 people that I noticed walked out of this film.
I was
very tempting to make it 6, to be honest. Yeah. I spent as much time looking at my phone at the time and being like, I'm staying up late. Normally I'd be in bed by now, but it's gonna be worth it. And it was for about 15 seconds when John Voight was in bed, and that's about as much as I'm gonna say. When that scene leaks to Twitter, watch that, and then you've got the best experience of this movie. Don't see it. It's such a shame to say don't see this movie from Francis Ford Coppola, who's put his own money into making his magnum opus, and it's this. I feel really bad, but not bad enough to recommend it. It's horrendous. It's really, really a shambles of a film.
I knew I'd hate this movie based off kind of buzz and everything else that was going around. By the time it was released, I'm like, this is awful. And I'm here for it. I love bad movies. So I sat down the back of the Lighthouse Theatre and I watched everyone else watch the shit movie, and I watched it through their eyes. I also kept score of the amount of people that walked out, and when they walked out, 40 minutes it took for the first people to walk out. There was 12 in total, and it was not a busy. I thought in the Lighthouse Cinema on the first Saturday night of their release, the first Saturday night show, and I thought it'd be full of weirdos like me who wanted to, who were there for the shit show, but it wasn't even. So 12 was a significant chunk. There was also, speaking to that fourth wall break moment, there was an usher who was standing at the side of the screen for ages, and I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it. And then he walked off and fuck, they didn't do it. Raging. But like, don't do what I did. Don't go see this. There's no redeeming qualities to this movie. It is awful. It is the equivalent of like someone in a suit at a nightclub who's locked and on coke and fancies himself as an intellectual, just fucking trying to chat up a girl and overpower her with references to the arts and using big words that he sees as like high-minded commentary about society, but to everyone else who's looking, he's just like, did you ever see fucking Jiggly, did you? That's what's happening here. It is awful. It is like, and it is, but it's fascinating in a way that you're watching people so talented in something so doomed, and they're trying. You cannot say that Adam Driver does not try and go along with what's happening here, but it's just ridiculous. The only person who made it out of this was Aubrey Plaza. Her character, she made it work. She got the brief. She is the only person in this movie who's like, this is a pile of garbage. I'm going to have a laugh. And like, she was kind of light, fun Aubrey Plaza, and it actually worked. Shia LaBeouf worked as well, but only because, and John Voight worked as well, just because they are the same type of weird as Coppola is being in this movie. So they actually synced up, but that's not a good thing because this movie is insufferable. It is incoherent from both a narrative and a style perspective. Like yourself, I found it's visually interesting, but totally inconsistent. Like it doesn't have a visual style other than to be stylish. It is a watermark for projects that exist in perpetual development hell for a reason. There is a reason it took 40 years to make, because it shouldn't have been made. But again, I kind of like that. I enjoy the experience of being around other people becoming enraged by a movie, and I start to enjoy it through watching them. But this movie has no redeeming qualities. At one stage, I was just like, fucking hell, space is in this. I totally forgot there was space. Then you're like, wait, this is a period piece. And then you're like, no, wait, I think they're making it into a musical now. And wait, you're like, no, it's an apocalypse movie. At one stage, it started to remind me of the worst non-racist parts of Temple of Doom, but without any of the redeeming qualities. It was also just like, again, it's bad faith. Like, again, there's reason that these systems are in place of checks and balances within Hollywood, like from studio executives just giving it the thumbs down. This is why. But there are reasons that like checks and balances are in place. Like there are some moments which, like, there's no intimacy coordinators on this. Coppola's going pure old school here.
That was interesting. That was actually one of the things I thought of immediately in one scene in this movie.
There's John Voight and Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah.
He full on sexually assaults her on the screen, and it's like there's no way around it, because there's a way to, he gropes her, and like there's a way to grope someone like for camera, you know what I mean? But like he gets in there and it's really uncomfortable. I felt awful for her. But that's not even the only scene. There's some nightclub scenes as well where you're like, you know, I don't know, I don't want to make any accusations here. Again, I don't have any reason for this, but I'm like, Shia LaBeouf looks like he's getting a bit too stuck in there. You know what I mean? Like these checks and balances exist for a reason. So it's not something that, like The Room, will over time become a cult classic, because it's so tasteless and deplorable in certain ways. And you instantly know and believe the stories that we hear from sets. Like even like, you know, Coppola's behavior, so credible based off this, based off this, because the movie is creepy itself. But then you've also got like stuff like actors making up lines and having scenes. There are total scenes where you're like, there's no reason for that to exist other than like someone must have came along and said, can I say this? And they did it, and they just go, yeah, and they kept it in the movie for some godforsaken reason. It's boring. It's not clever. If you're saying it's clever, you're lying to yourself and others. Coppola like is not going to be your friend. You're not high-minded for thinking this is great. I don't want to take it away. If you enjoyed this and got something out of it, please feel free to tell me why, but try not to be like, you just didn't get it, man, because I fucking got it. This is a shit movie. It didn't work, and nobody wanted to make it for a reason, and nobody should see it, because even as a shit movie, it somehow still manages to fail. It's awful. Megalopolis. Don't waste your time. Go see anything else. And there are some fun things. Now, we are a bit tight for time, so we'll try to keep these short, but there were a couple of pleasant surprises, particularly we're in Halloween season now. We've already talked about The Substance and Beetlejuice, Halloween-themed movies. A couple of sneaky under-the-radar horrors, if you're looking. One was one I spoke about last month, Speak No Evil, which is the latest from Blumhouse, which has been the hive of many of the kind of recent buzzy but blah horror releases over the last decade. The Paranormal Activity series, The Purge, Sinister, Insidious. Again, movies that I probably lean more towards hating because it's got that shit kind of textbook modern horror formula, whereas I like mine a bit more, I don't know, realistic or get under your skin. It also stars James McAvoy. So Tom, thoughts on Speak No Evil?
Yeah, really pleasant surprise, this one. Because the main talk I heard coming up to this was like that it wasn't really being marketed, and normally it's like, oh, there's a reason for that. James McAvoy is another one of those actors that like people sleep on him as an actor. Anytime he's in something, he's just like he gives it his all, and he is so great in this. Um, as you know, as a film, I would say there's not really any surprises. It definitely feels like you're always one step ahead of the film. I thought maybe that's just my own head. I was like, oh, I know what happened here. I know that's what's going to happen, and that was fine. It's based on the Danish one, and I did mention I think the last time we did this that I'd heard the Danish one gets very dark. I've heard the ending of this one is a bit lighter. It's still a pretty fucking dark film though. I thought it was just really entertaining. It's I would say it's like it's probably like a B film that's elevated by James McAvoy. It might even be a C film that's elevated to a B, to be honest. I thought like the performances were pretty good. I think this is actually like by the end it was a really kind of entertaining, kind of thrillery horror kind of that really worked. I think it's one of those films, and this is a weird compliment to say. I think when this gets onto streaming, like if this gets onto Netflix, I think it's going to be one of those big hits that people are like, "Oh shit, I saw that in cinema," and now it's in the top 10 for a month on end. It feels like one that people are going to get into when they get around to seeing it. Yeah, I thought it was really entertaining. A nice kind of pleasant surprise when we got into this month. I actually, honestly, before we got to Megalopolis, theatrically at least, I don't think I saw a bad film this month.
Yeah, agree. Like it's been a sneaky great month, and not a lot under the radar. And this is also flying under the radar. I expected this to be. I went in expecting this to be just generic and one of these kind of middle of the road horror movies, but James McAvoy might elevate it. And what I got was a really good, well told horror movie, and James McAvoy elevated it as well. What I loved about this is that great horror for me doesn't need to be about monsters. It doesn't need to be fantastical. It doesn't need to be spooky. It doesn't need to be supernatural at any stage. It can just be about basic everyday things. And the original Danish movie, which was written and directed by Christian Taftrup, was about his anxiety of being invited to stay with a couple he'd befriended on holiday with his wife, which really happened, and they said no, but he just let his anxiety run wild. And that is where all great horror should come from. What is the worst that can happen? And a lot of this movie and the horror of this movie plays on like just the little the first hour of it is build, and there's a lot of little boundary breaking moments where someone like gets a little too personal, but you're like, oh, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't bring it up there and then, you know what I mean? But it's like, don't
Yeah.
do that. Oh, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? There's one scene which sums it up perfectly where they're staying in, they're guests in this home, Scoot McNairy and Ashton Francoisi, I think. Brilliant performance, by the way. I don't think this is just James McAvoy. Shout out as
Yeah,
well to
it's
Mackenzie
Scoot
Davis.
McNairy Scoot McNairy is the dad.
Yeah.
Ashling Francoisi is the your man's is James McAvoy's wife.
Yeah,
As
exactly.
Mackenzie Davis is the other one, isn't it?
And Mackenzie Davis is yeah,
Scoot
exactly.
McNairy's
Mackenzie
wife.
Davis.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. Sorry. So yeah, all the lead performers, and it's a small cast, but everyone nails it here. But there's one scene where they're trying to get into the bed and they're like, is that stain new? And I'm just like, oh my god, it's already the most horrible movie ever. Because what do you do? Do you go out and you're like, did you clean your bed sheet? You can't, so you just have to fucking deal with it, or you have to go. And then it kind of just builds in a really traditional way, but just well executed, to like, just go, just get out of here. I found myself rooting for the boring scenario of just go, just leave. I'm okay with this being shit and you being safe because I'm bought into their safety and the concept as well. And then it does inevitably go bonkers, but like Jane, like somehow they keep it on track. You know what I mean? It never becomes a horror movie where it's like, well, that's not in the rules, or that didn't happen, or that. It somehow all makes sense while managing to also be thrilling in the way it executes. And you're following along, like even there's a scene in the house and so on. Again, I'm not giving away much. You know a lot of this from the trailer. There's no twists or surprises in kind of where it goes. But there's scenes in the house, and I'm like, I feel like I know the house. I feel like I'm able to follow everyone around, and I know the layout. And I'm like, you need to go upstairs and you need to go here, or blah, blah, blah. And it did that really well. It is better than it has any right to be, and exactly and as fun and as good as I wanted it to be. I was fully engaged the entire time. If you're looking for just a fun horror movie to enjoy and get under your skin in a way you won't be ready for, because studios don't make horror movies that are this subtle anymore, and just kind of just play on such simple premises. They have to
Yeah.
they have to go crazier. They have to go wilder. This doesn't. It remains very composed, and then it goes bonkers, but even then it still makes sure to make sense and
Yeah.
be
It's a really,
entertaining.
really, really tight horror film. Like there's not
Yeah.
like a lot of flab, or it didn't try to reinvent the wheel. It just did what it needed to do really effectively.
Which
Yeah.
can also be said about the other horror movie we want to touch on quickly, Strange Darling. Like, this is something that I heard nothing about. I just heard good reviews, and that's my favorite cinema experience. Go in, blow me away. All I knew about this was that it was fleshed out from a visual idea the writer-director J.T. Molnar had of a final girl running towards a camera cliche. We all know that. That's how the movie opens, and the movie itself is then about toying with those cliches and what we think is happening versus it'll constantly pull back, and the movie is told deliberately out of sequence, so it's not linear storytelling, and but it constantly pulls back the story and subverts what you know without giving anything away, because you should experience this. But what were your thoughts on Strange Darling?
Yeah, a really nice surprise. I'd heard of this film only because there's a YouTube channel I watch called Red Letter Media that did like a whole video series on Kyle Gallner films, and then all of a sudden this new one came out, and they were like, "You should check this film out." I was like, "Okay, I don't need to know anymore." Never thinking it would actually get to Ireland, because it's like it never does, like these kind of films. And then it got here, and it was such a pleasant surprise. I knew very little about it going into it. It kind of starts with the sort of Texas Chainsaw Massacre style kind of opening crawl of like, oh, this is a murder based on blah blah blah. But it just gives you enough information to make you kind of question what's going on. I do think if there is a kind of a flaw with the story structure, it is that the fact that it's told out of sequence makes you second guess things, and it might lead you to figure out what's going on more than before you should. But I also feel like the film kind of keeps you guessing and had enough kind of elements to it that it was a really, really, really satisfying watch in general. I think, main performance wise, like Willa Fitzgerald, who again, I'm not even sure if they gave her a character a name, or did they just call her the lady.
Yeah.
We have like the billing is like one character is the lady and the other character is kind of the demon, and that's pretty much it. As far as actors in the film, she was phenomenal in this film. I really think this is like a breakout role, and if she goes on to conquer Hollywood, it's going to be like that was the point we knew. Kyle Gallner, at the other hand, is like one of these journeyman actors who's like only in the last few years getting kind of his roses. So seeing him in a role like this was excellent. I thought the film had such a nice level of like grit to it in a weird way, and that's kind of a weird way to compliment a film. But I feel like it was dark without feeling like it was unnecessarily dark. It felt unsettlingly believable. Like if someone told me like, hey, by the way, based on a true story, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that actually. I thought like visually it was very, very simple, but it also had a lot of nice visual for it. Like it took scenes that could have very easily been like, God, this is much to look at, and made them interesting. Like there's kind of scenes of people being bathed in neon, or like lightings in the room is different, or things like that. I thought was really good. Again, a really effective kind of thriller. I thought again, people are kind of calling it a horror film. And I guess I can see why, but to me, this is like a thriller. It kind of, I don't know why. It actually kind of weirdly reminded me of. Have you ever seen like the Spielberg film Jewel?
Yes, great.
And I don't know. It's a weird comparison to make, because if you haven't seen Jewel, it's just about a guy being chased by a truck. Yeah, it's kind of cat and mousey in a weird way. But like again, then it sounds like I'm comparing like I don't know, a person to a truck. I don't know. That's where it falls apart really quickly. I can tell the difference, by the way, Joe, just in case you think I'm not trying to get into people on my way to work, like, But no, I think it's one of those ones that is a great calling card for JT Molnar and for the cast of this. Just again, a really effective thriller. That keeps going, and it felt as well like as you get into the last kind of act of it, it felt like there was things to say there about our society and how we treat people based on certain ideas we have of them. And I thought that was an interesting thing to explore in general. And I honestly, without going to spoilers, the kind of idea and presentation of certain characters in this film, and this is probably going to mean nothing unless you've seen the film, I've been thinking that for a long time, and I'm like, why didn't a film do that? Why didn't a film play with our expectations of certain characters based on what we were presented as opposed to what we
Yeah.
know about them? And I think that was the ace up this film's sleeve, that it just played with our expectations. Really great under the radar film for this
Yeah.
year. Again, didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but absolutely one that if you throw it on, you're not going to be disappointed.
And what I liked about that concept, because I totally agree, it does leave subverting your expectations. What you see is not necessarily what's going on in front of you. It doesn't overplay its hand there or try delve into it. It just lets you leave the cinema thinking about it, and it does that really well. This was a proper 2 a.m. You're flicking around the stations in the 90s because you can't sleep, and then you just fall upon this movie and you end up totally engrossed by it, and it becomes one of your favorite movies ever. And it looks that way. It's actually shot by Giovanni Ribisi, who is probably best known as Frank Buffet from Junior from Friends.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. Like,
Yeah,
I'm a
wild.
massive Giovanni Ribisi fan.
Wild.
Totally random. Don't understand why,
Wild.
but
Love it. No, he's great, and he's a great cinematographer as well. It was shot on a budget of 4 million in 32 days, and amazing. JT Molnar absolutely nailed it as director as well. Again, it's non-linear, so it's a story told in 6 chapters, but it starts at chapter 3, and then you kind of go around there. It seems to be a simple cat and mouse story, but it's the reason I thought it was never predictable, because you could pick certain things that were going to happen, but they were so good at twisting it every single time that you're like, surely there's one more. Like, you know what I mean? You never were sure that you were at the end of the twists, if that makes sense. And that pretty much goes on right until the end of the credits. Like, it does continue to twist, but never in a way that feels gimmicky or untrue to the story or sensationalistic. It's all very real. And again, you'd believe it if it happened. And JT Molnar is getting questions about, is this a true story? People not want it to be true, but it's just believable in a way that, you got these people who, like, all they watch are like crime documentaries and so on, and they're kind of it's playing into their kind of heads as well. There's a couple of nice cameos in here as well, with kind of some familiar faces, but 90% of the movie is Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner. And again, they push and pull our perception of these characters without ever being untrue to what we've seen beforehand. They manage to make sense of it, even though we see these characters from every direction and every perspective. And it's all within 90 minutes. It flies by. It is a little gem. Strange Darling. I really recommend it. Tom, we did make you watch Jennifer Lopez's Atlas because you had seen a lot of good movies this month, and we couldn't have you enjoying yourself too much now, could we? But before we get on to that, just a quick mention for some of the movies we've seen this month. I'll get started. Just a few more. His Three Daughters is available on Netflix. Stars Elizabeth Olsen, Carrie Coon, and oh shit, I'm blanking. What's her name? Oh my God. She's one of my favorite actors. Natasha Lyonne. Jesus Christ. Really simple story. It's based around, have you ever, like, I'm not asking, but like, if you've ever lived through someone in hospice care at end of life and had to spend a lot of time with family, and they start to fucking wreck your head and it tears everything apart, and then you put it back together, and every day seems like an epic. It just tells that story in a very contained space, and it's really, really effective. A bit of a slow burn movie, but I really enjoyed it. I went to see Lee, which is Sky's new movie based on World War II photographer, starring Kate Winslet. It is made by Sky. I did not enjoy it. So what I will say is you should check out Sky Mobile, which is available very soon. I'm sure they're going to be an excellent mobile provider. I don't want to get myself in trouble. Mrs. Robinson is the last one I saw, which is a documentary on Mary Robinson and her time. Very nostalgic, very real and in the years vibes, but very good at kind of explaining her legend. So if you have teenage daughters or something, you want to kind of show a woman and how she overcame the odds and so on, and and teach someone about this. It's a very instructive documentary. It's fun. She's really engaging. She's still got it. She's still really witty. She still speaks excellently, and it goes back through the stories. If anything, too quickly, but it's not up there, I'd say, with Nothing Compares by Sinead O'Connor, but that's just the derivation in the personalities of the two. You know, Mary Robinson is a bit more what you see is what you get. But Mrs. Robinson, if it's something you'd be interested in, it's something you probably quite enjoy. Tom, any other movies you want to touch on real quickly before?
Yeah, the only one I wanted to mention is actually also on Netflix. It's called Rebel Ridge. It came from director Jeremy Saulnier, who made Blue Ruin, Green Room, which I think were both two excellent films. Basically, it's kind of like a new version of First Blood. You know, there's kind of corruption with the cops, and they're kind of harassing this person, and it takes a very interesting few turns. Again, I think he's a great filmmaker. There's a great cast in this. Aaron Pierre, who I wasn't familiar with, he was replacing John Boyega. I won't say his film nearly fell apart because John Boyega left like mid-production or something. Is really good. Don Johnson is in it, is really good. And yeah, it's just a kind of a tight kind of cop thriller. It's a little bit of a slow burn, and I think it's maybe a little bit too long, but I think it's definitely worth checking out if you got a Netflix account.
Okay, Rebel Ridge, check it out, guys. Tom, haha, we haven't done this in a while. Last time we did this feature, we watched this so you don't have to. And if it's your first time listening to this, we do our reviews with no spoilers, but there is one section we will keep for spoilers where we, as film reviewers, and some may say heroes, will bravely go and watch the shit movies and tell you exactly what's happening, because that's easier than you having to watch them yourself. What we've been doing since we launched this feature is we've been taking turns and nominating a movie that the other person has to watch. Last time, Tom made me watch the Jennifer Lopez movie based on her life on Amazon Prime. So I said, let's keep the J-Lo vibes going, and made him watch fucking Atlas on Netflix. There will be spoilers here, but don't worry, we're actually doing you a favor by giving it away, because now you can know what happened and not have to watch it, and it'll probably be more entertaining. Tom, you watched Atlas, so we didn't have to. I did not, because you were doing it. Tell me what I missed.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice that we gave J-Lo a bit of a break. She's been going through a lot, you know. It's not like your last film you watched by her probably hasn't aged very well in the last few months, I think. And you know, then I was like, we should give poor J-Lo a break. And then I saw she was in a photo at a P. Diddy party, and I was like, well, fuck her, let's tear apart Atlas.
She's like, why are you doing that?
So this is like, I want to say this is the quintessential Netflix movie, in that you look at it and you're like, that's not a real movie, and then you sit down and you're like, oh shit, it's 2 hours long. This is basically boilerplate sci-fi. The world is under attack by machines led by, and I did not create this term, they use it every time, an AI terrorist, a robot called Harlan, who kills millions and then says, fuck it, I'm out of here, and flees Earth after the humans beat him a few times. I guess he literally just seems to, they're very unspecific. He kills 3 million people, and then there's a battle and he loses a few, and he's like, I'm leaving Earth. And he's gone. It's like a child rage quitting on Fortnite. It's great. And this, by the way, the film hasn't even started. That's over like the montage of the credits. And you're like, oh, well, that seems like it could have been an interesting film. Then we cut to 28 years later, not the Danny Boyle's upcoming film. No, just 28 years later. He has still not returned to Earth, and we follow a character. This is a real name, Atlas Shepard. Because I'm guessing they played Mass Effect as one of their influences, so they're like something Shepard. Played by Jennifer Lopez. She's an analyst who distrusts artificial intelligence. Now, it's good that they tell you that, because you're looking around her apartment, which is the opening scene, and everything she's doing is computers and artificial intelligence. She's like playing chess with them. She's like getting her coffee from a machine. I'm like, what exactly are you doing here? I thought you don't like robots and artificial intelligence.
What do you think artificial intelligence is, J-Lo?
Well, that's the problem. The artificial intelligence in this movie doesn't make any sense. I call them AI terrorists. It's basically just like, they're robots. It's Terminator. It's Terminator. Okay.
Right.
One of Harlan's right-hand men is apprehended. So they call her in, even though she's like just, you know, it's like, okay, what's she going to do here? She's an analyst. She interrogates him, because basically they're like, she's an analyst, but then it seems like basically every opportunity they give her, she's a cop. So she like interrogates this guy, and it's meant to show how clever she is, even though it really doesn't. Basically, he's like, we know you know the location of that guy, and she's like trying to hack into him, and she's like, oh, well, I found it in your head, and he's like, no, you haven't. And he goes, haha, but in checking to see that I haven't seen it, you actually showed me where it was. Da-da-da. I was like, oh, what a twist. I'm like, Jesus, awful. And then like we're meant to be like sympathetic to JLo, and then she just kills this AI head guy, and we're like, oh, okay,
Rude.
okay, that was a bit much. So again, tonally, this movie is a little bit all over the place. So now they know where this terrorist Harlan is, and basically she's like, I'm going to go with the Rangers. She's going to go with the soldiers to hunt him down at this deadly planet, even though they're literally, as if to set up the character. There's a big scene between oh god, who is it? Between Mark Strong and Sterling K. Brown, where they're basically just like, oh, she's no good. We can't use her. And someone's like, oh, she's the best we've got. They're having this whole scene where she's not even present. It's like every cop film ever.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, fuck it, I guess she can go anyway. So immediately she's with all these soldiers, and the soldiers like, we got AIs, we've got what we call Neuralinks, which is a very pivotal part of the movie. And then she walks in with paper, and they're like, where did you find the printer? What an idiot. And then it's just like, well, digital stuff can be hacked. And it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, great. So that's
these
the level
people
of
are
intelligence we're dealing
lunatics
with.
today. Like people
Yeah.
who do that like in 2024 are that's funny.
Yeah, and then for no reason they give us these Neuralinks, and they're linked to giant mechs because they want to get every sci-fi trope in there. There's giant mechs in this movie as well. So as these mechs are about to drop down on the planet where Harlan is holed up, the ship is attacked and nearly blown to pieces. And a lot of the soldiers are already in their mechs, except for Atlas, who is now holding on and going to get sucked into space. But there's only one thing that can save her: embracing technology. So she gets put into a mech suit against her will by the Sterling K. Brown Colonel character. And that's basically where the movie kind of stops being a movie for good chunks of it. It doesn't sound like a movie up to this point, but now, for a lot of the movie, we're just left with what is the equivalent of J-Lo in a cockpit arguing with the sat nav. For a good hour of the film, because she's just inside them. And basically, by the way, I should also point out like her reluctance to use the Neuralink and the sat nav for ages as she's tumbling from the sky, cost another soldier their life. Like the soldier's like, put on the earpiece, and she's like, no. You're like, we just done that. She survived. It doesn't matter though; they're pretty much all dead anyway. So basically, what we have is that she gets stranded in enemy territory with this sassy AI pilot, which. Look, if you're going to have a sassy sidekick, and that rarely works in a film, but if you want a character to deliver comedy lines, don't pick an AI voice. Like, imagine if every joke you heard was delivered by like the TikTok voice, because it's not far off that. It's literally just a non-emotive voice. But they do give him a name. The AI character is called Smith. And basically, he keeps telling her like, "This is what we need to do to survive." And she's like, "Shut up! I'm not listening to a robot. She's an absolute Karen." Like, and it's like totally logical advice. It's like basically like, hey, if you just like walk this way, I can do the walking. And she's like, no, I'll walk myself. And then she's like walking in the robot to get the robot to walk. It's so, and they treat that as like a big defining moment. Like, you walk, J-Lo, you walk. You're making that robot walk. And we're like, I don't know the difference in what you just did. To be honest, I should also mention like it's got that weird CGI where everything is like overly shiny. It looks a little bit like a kind of video game cutscene. The movie never really looked great, but basically she just talks to this AI robot for ages. It doesn't really go well. She gets to the drop point where they were meant to meet, and all the other Rangers are dead. And while there, she also sees the humanoid, Harlan's right-hand man, that she thought was dead, that she killed on Earth, that's actually alive. And she just goes, Harlan made a new one. Which means, like, why are we all here then? They brought like 15 soldiers against a guy who had 28 years to just constantly make other soldiers and fight them. So, again, this plan is flawed from the beginning. Like, she's surrounded by Harlan soldiers. We get a really bad action scene. That's, again, big video game cutscene energy. Basically, it ends with her like dropping a nuke on like all these guys.
What?
The pilot is like, "Oh, use weapons," and she's like, "Use the ion bomb or whatever," and he's like, "I wouldn't recommend that," and she does it anyway, which basically just goes like,
genocidal.
It's like a load, like wipes out every living thing around the place, like
genocidal.
Yeah, genocidal. That is a movie I'd watch. But like, basically, she does that, and the pilot, who again. This is the problem with AI and with the technology in this movie. The pilot strictly says, my goal and my prime directive is to keep humans alive. I will protect the pilot. But I guess not when it's about point scoring, because he could have said, don't use the bomb or prohibit her from using the bomb. But he doesn't because he takes this moment to be really sassy. Like, the reason I told you not to use the bomb is because it's going to open up a sinkhole. And it does. And the mech falls into a hole. And then they're just in the darkness. And J-Lo has hurt herself. And the thing is, the robot again is point scoring me like, I could help you, you know. I could help you. I'm a robot. I can help you. I can heal you. And then it gave me the one moment in the movie I actually did like is like he does all this medical like treatment on her to fix her busted leg, and then at the end he like gives her a lollipop. Which I was like, that's kind of funny.
Well,
aside from that, basically, Atlas is like, I'm not going to use the Neuralink. You can't connect to my brain and see my memories. Again, they don't really do a great job explaining what the Neuralink would do, because when she starts finally embracing the Neuralink, it's like, this is what you see. And basically what the robot seems to see is all the controls that are already on the dashboard, they pop up and they go into your face. It's like really bad AR graphics when you're watching a sports game. You know, it's like, wow, you're telling me I can see the score? Oh, the score is there anyway? Okay, but it's just in my face, you know? It's like really, really bad. And basically, in doing that, eventually we find out that the Neuralink, as they explore the memories, it turns out that J-Lo's mother created Harlan. Dun, dun, dun. And not only that, it's also revealed that, like, basically later on in the film, she's the reason he went ballistic, because she put on a Neuralink, and in doing that, he had like a totally open interface, I think was the phrasing.
Right.
So now he was like, and again, that would be a decent twist. But the problem is that, like, this is meant to be intelligent technology, AI technology. I'm surely that would have been up on the internet who created Harlan. And, you know, but also the thing is, like, even if that was interesting, it then goes like the most obvious thing, which is like the robot realized that its purpose to save humanity, and the worst thing that could only damn humanity is humans themselves. I'm keeping humans alive by killing humans. You know, it's like, come on, man, we've all seen Terminator. Move on.
Yeah.
So that keeps happening, basically. Again, the robot just is very inconsistent in its beliefs. It's like, she's like, we're going to go to Harlan's base, and I'm going to geotag it so it can be striked at. Which again is weird, because he can literally brings up a map and is like, he's here. So why don't you just use that map? He's like, no, we need to get there and tag it. And he's like, you're not doing this. And she's like, I am. And she's like, it's okay. I trust you. And I'm like, what sort of AI system is this, where it's like, I'm going to protect you, and then being like, no, okay, but if you really want to do it, I guess. So basically, it goes about as well as you expect. They get to Harlan's base, and immediately it just falls apart. Simu Liu, by the way, is Harlan. He's literally in the opening credits, and then like the last like 10 minutes, he shows up with 45 minutes left in the movie. And they've captured J-Lo at this point. The mech is seemingly captured as well. Turns out Sterling K. Brown, who we think is dead, is actually alive. Big twist. And also, one of my favorite villain tropes, that's just such lazy writing at this point, especially when your villain isn't there for most of the movie. He's like, that's right, my plan was to bring you to this planet, because now I'm going to use the ship you brought to destroy the Earth. And you're like, obviously, yeah. Yeah, so that all goes on, and then basically Sterling K. Brown survives just long enough to be like, hey, you still have your Neuralink. And I don't know why they didn't take the Neuralink off her when they took her captive. I don't know why, but he's like, you can still contact Smith, you can still contact your mech. And she does, and the mech comes in and saves her. Sterling K. Brown then just realizes he's had enough time in this movie and just decides to sacrifice himself, which is kind of pointless. She's inside a mech anyway. He didn't really need to sacrifice herself. And they're presumably going to like nuke the planet anyway at this point. I mean, she had no problem like nuking people earlier, but now she's like, no, I better run out of here in the mech suit. And for some weird reason, they get like a big fight where she's fighting. Harlan and her are like kind of the last one standing in this whole thing. I did think it was funny that like when it's like she's like, I'm going to contact my mech, he just bursts through the wall. They're like lying on the floor on like a pallet. There's rock and concrete thrown everywhere. I was like, you could have just killed them, dude. But no, she gets in the suit. Harlan and the suit are fighting, and it's really just very, very odd. Like for some reason they get into a hand-to-hand fight. He's got this weird kind of lightsaber, kind of whip. It like, you know, it's literally because they wanted to rip off Star Wars as well, I'm guessing. Yeah. So they start like fighting, and it's the whole thing of like, you know, obviously she learns to trust Smith and all this shit. Like, so Harlan is like nearly dead. And she like, or sorry, she's thrown out of the mech. The mech is nearly dying. Harlan is about to kill the mech, and then he looks up and why he thought J-Lo's body is there, she isn't there anymore. And from what I can tell, in this weird sci-fi movie full of sci-fi gadgets, it looks like she just kills their man with a pole. Like she gets up behind him and just goes bam, and like
He
it
was
goes
right
like
all
through his
along.
eye. Yeah, I was like, you should have
needs
trusted.
tech?
Like, yeah, you don't need technology. A trusty metal rod will do the trick. Like, just jabs him, and he's like on the floor, just like glitching out or whatever. And he basically is like, you got me to save humanity. I was humanity's last hope, and I was the only one of my kind, and there'll never be better than me. And she says something like, "Smith is better," and you're meant to be like, that's a weak note to end it on. Like, hey, guess what? I didn't trust technology, but turns out technology's better now.
Having
Like,
one not
really,
using technology.
yeah, like really weird. Like, now the other thing I should say, one kind of interesting point is Smith basically says like as she confesses that like it's her fault that Harlan is out there. He's like, well, if it wasn't for Harlan, I wouldn't be here either. And it's like, yeah, that's probably not consolation to like 3 million people that are dead, but hey, robots got slightly better, thank God. So yeah, she goes back to Earth. She had a dream of being one of the Rangers, and now she is a Ranger. Harlan is killed. Smith is destroyed, and it basically ends with her getting into a mech, and they're like, "We have a new mech for you, and this mech has been done to your modifications." And then it's like, "What voice do you want?" Ooh, generic voice that I had back in the old days. And it's like, "What?" She goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Wanna guess?" And it's like, "Oh, Smith survived! Yay! The computer program survived." I'm like, I couldn't think of less of a shit about that. Oh, you got the same AI voice. It remembered that you caused fucking genocide. Well done. Like, oh, this is a really derivative sci-fi film. There's not really any original ideas in here. There's more holes in the script than words on the page. Like, it's horrendous. It's dull. The effects are standard. It's boring. Like, it's not like it's a terrible film. It just feels like, when Netflix makes movies and you're like, that's not real, or that's definitely not good. Feels like they just fill the quota. Really boring. Ironically, for a script that's all like anti-AI, it feels so AI generated. It was like, hey, we want a sci-fi movie that's a cross between the Terminator and Titanfall, and also a weird buddy cop dynamic where they don't trust each other. Oh, and can you make it extra boring? And that's what they got. J-Lo is okay in it. I'll give her that much. Like, she has to do a lot of heavy lifting. Basically, she's the only human on screen for most of the movie.
So you want to be, yeah. Fair.
Yeah, so like the movie has no idea though, like what it's trying to say. It feels like a sci-fi film that isn't sure what stand to take on AI, and therefore instead of coming up with anything meaningful, it just blathers on until it reaches the 2 hour mark and then dies without dignity. Yeah, like it's just kind of like AI bad. It's like AI is really bad, but is it? And then it's like, oh, it's over. Yeah, that's not good. I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't recommend it. They set up for a sequel, I guess. I don't ever want to see it again. It's not good. Yeah, like watch any good sci-fi film. Watch any film we mentioned except for Megalopolis this week, and you'd be better off.
Okay,
but yes,
Tom,
it's thank God,
you can
yeah,
breathe.
it's over.
You're off the hook. You're done now for a couple of months, and with that, I'm dreading comes your opportunity to nominate me to watch a movie. So nobody else has to next month.
You recommended I watch Rebel Moon. You recommended I watch Atlas, so I can tell you're a bit of a sci-fi buff.
Oh, no.
But I don't know. I sometimes I get a vibe off you that you're really into young adult stuff. You're down with the kids, right?
No.
You don't remember the young adult trend. Oh yeah, what's that? It's 10 or 15 years out of date. I don't care. Netflix didn't get the message, because I want to give you a movie that The Guardian has said, an empty and exasperating teen book adaptation set in a future where beautiful people rule the world, is one of the year's most pointless, in their 1-star review of a film called Uglies. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's also directed by Mac G, who I'm like, Mac G, I didn't know he still made films. But the mark of quality is Mac G. It's basically a film where, like, at a certain age, people are given cosmetic surgery to become pretty. It stars Joey King, Laverne Cox, and yeah, according to Wikipedia, it received negative reviews from critics. I think it has 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
McGee.
enjoy that. Enjoy that. It came out
He is.
middle of September, so at least you'll be on the cutting edge of this hot YA craze that is
Who
Elise.
knows? Maybe it'll be his McMasterpiece. I don't think it will be. McGee doesn't have that. He is essentially the Hollywood director version of McLovin. It's like,
Yep.
what? That's your name? Yeah, that's his name. Terrible if you're not familiar with McGee. So, okay, thanks for that, Tom. I hate you, but you've served well, Tom. You can just look forward now to next month, and you don't have to watch any show. What movies
Mhm.
particularly are you looking forward to?
Again, we always kind of have to struggle with whether or not it'll actually reach Ireland in this month. But there's stuff I'm interested in. I mean, obviously, kind of we're getting into the spooky season here a little bit. So I'm interested in Terrifier 3. I don't even know if I like the Terrifier movies, but I'm just glad they're out there, I guess, that someone is carrying the slasher flame. Like, I watched the first two recently and I was like, did I enjoy that? No, I don't think so, but good on him. I am also interested. There's kind of a weird. I kind of feel like I'm torturing myself. I want to see the new Venom movie. I didn't like any of the other Venom movies, but there's like a Venom horse in this, and I'm like, okay, right on. No, the one I'm really excited for though is Enora, Sean Baker's film. It played really well at the festival. It stars Mikey Madison, and apparently it's really good. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year. I really enjoyed Red Rocket, so I'm hoping it's coming out this month in
Ooh,
Ireland.
yes.
So I think that could be a sneaky good one that comes out in October. But yeah, that's kind of the highlight for October for me off the top of my head.
Red Rocket's another hidden gem if you're looking for a really funny, different comedy movie. There's a couple which, again, I'm looking forward to seeing, but I'm not sure they're going to be good. I'm going to see Joker Folie à Deux in
Oh
Odeon
yes.
Leicester Square, which is the former Empire Cinema this Friday. Another one I'm looking forward to, but I'm not sure it's going to be good. But if it hits, it's going to really hit. Saturday night. The trailers don't make this look amazing. It is the story of how Saturday Night Live came to be in the 70s. But if you've heard the stories, you know that if they get it right, it will be
Yeah.
amazing. But I don't know if they have based off the trailers, but I'm still going to go see it. A couple of under the radar gems that I feel are the ones we'll be talking about. Like, I didn't expect that to be great, but it was amazing. Piece by Piece, a Lego retelling of Pharrell Williams' life story seems just random and out there enough that it has to be a good idea, right? And the last one is claymation stories are having their return to glory, especially ones starring animals that can talk. So particularly after Marcel the Shell with shoes on. Well, not even animals. That's the shell. It's not an animal. It's an inanimate object. It's the opposite of an animal.
Do you know how bad I had to really stop myself from shouting when you said it's an inanimate object, quoting fucking Rafe Fiennes from In Bruges and saying, "You're an inanimate fucking object." You know how hard I had to try.
But I'm looking forward to seeing Memoir of a Snail, a claymation movie starring Sarah Snook and Eric Bana, which is getting good reviews as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about, at least in part, next month on the show. In the meantime, Tom, end the plug. And if you don't event the plug, as always, here on page 180, just talk about something you like or you're into.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything specific to plug at the moment. I'm kind of at the stage where there's things I've plugged that I've had to push to the wayside because we're getting into October. October is often a very busy season for the Pop Cult Pod. I've gone back to start writing a video that I started writing 3 years ago that I'm hoping to get out for Halloween.
Your
Expect
Megalopolis.
yes, that's right, and it's going to be just as good. But like last year I did top 13 Friday the 13th kills. This year I'm going to have a top 10 of another slasher villain. Aside from that, I don't. It's too early to talk about Christmas, but
Yeah.
December is going to be manic at the Pop Cult Pod. There's always stuff happening over here. I'm already making plans for next year. I had a call with a friend yesterday to start a new series, so there's always stuff there that's coming up, and there's loads of stuff to check back on if you've never checked it out. So yeah, Pop Cult Pod, YouTube, anywhere really. I'm the only Pop Cult Pod out there.
Tom, you love a team, and this is the time of year where Tom comes into his own. Check out Pop Cult Pod. Link is in the show notes. Guys, next time on page 180, I'm going to be discussing Rings of Power Season 2 with Jerry, and I cannot fucking wait to discuss it. We're already sending each other 6-minute voice messages back and forth about it all, theorizing. So I can't wait to discuss it. I'm loving the new series. Catch up. It's all on Amazon Prime if you haven't already. Tom, thanks so much as always for joining us. We'll be back in October to discuss it all. I'll have watched Uglies and we'll have watched some good movies hopefully as well then. But until next month, this has been page 180. And I believe it was Dostoevsky that said, later, fucker.